Trumka here. I'm a retired assistant chief from the Saanich Fire Department, but now I'm a realtor with Pemberton Homes, and most importantly, I'm a car guy. Welcome to the Black Dog Car Show. This show is about building a 1947 Ford sedan delivery, and I want you to follow along with me, and this is our first episode, and in this episode, I'm going to explain how I put a clip from an S10 into a 1947 Ford chassis. So with that, we can get started on the program. Okay, with putting a clip in, the most important thing was to keep the wheelbase length the same as a Ford, so you don't have to change the openings in the fenders. It took a lot of measuring, it took a lot of leveling. You cannot work without the frame being level, and you have to have where the wheels will go on the rear of the chassis, and that's done with plumb bobs. To start, you have to center the car or the chassis, and you have to use a plumb bob, and you have to have a center line running the length of the chassis so your measurements are exact, and that chassis cannot move from that day on. And just to level this up, and it was my first try, and I tried to be a perfectionist, it took me a couple of days just to level the chassis backwards, forwards, and sideways, and center the lines on this to make everything work out. Appears at this time it worked out very well. There is a couple of issues that I've learned for a starter, and one was I fitted the fenders at the beginning, and I cut the horns up here, which was not a good idea because I lost my reference points for the cross measurements. So I had to go back to factory places all over the chassis to get the clip in absolutely straight and join it to the back of the chassis. With that, the measurements again were critical from where to cut the chassis, the old front end, to get the new clip in, but have the spindles of both in the same place, which gives me the wheel base length that I needed. And that was extremely critical. When we got to cutting it off, the cutting part was easy to take it apart. The actual fitting of the chassis was not difficult, but the trick I used is I bought 4 small jacks from Princess Auto so I could level the clip and move it up and down as need be. Again, everything worked off a center line from the clip back to the lines that were on the floor to center the whole frame and the clip now. So the frame has to stay stationary with those center lines that are marked on the floor, and you sort of work from the floor up, not the chassis down. Now, to explain the 2 lines and how I got the center of the rear wheels, the white line is the center of the old axle. With me trying to put in some springs from a 1998 Explorer, we wound up with the center being on the orange line, and we had to move the front perch. And there's a lot more to this that I'll explain later in another episode, but basically this white line is the actual center of where the wheel should, or the axle should be, which will center the wheels in the wheel well. And that was, again, just trial and error till we had it right, and we were a 1/4 inch out the first time. So that was corrected, and we did try and put in the Explorer springs. Well, that wraps up episode 1, and I'd like to thank you all for joining me. I hope it was informative. It was a difficult process, but taken slowly in steps, it worked out quite well. And the next episode, I'm going to explain to you why people don't like putting a Ford motor in a hot rod. And it, again, is another difficult process, but it can be done. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, car guys don't die, they just drive away.